The entire Jamaica is in World Cup fever, and the Kingston and St. Andrew Parish Library on Tom Redcombe Drive is getting in on the fun. So if you're in town between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m, be sure to stop by to get your World Cup fix. Hello and welcome to another edition of Jamaica Magazine. I'm your host, Arroyo Eubanks. We have an information-packed program lined up for you, so let's kickstart the show with a word of advice, followed by the news. Soon comes.
Hurricanes can strike at any time. In the event of one, be prepared to act quickly. If a hurricane watch or warning has been issued, review your home disaster response plan. Map out likely routes to evacuate if your home is at risk and confirm with relatives or friends you plan to stay with. Also, confirm the location of the nearest shelter. Check your emergency supplies and restock if necessary. Remember, disasters do happen, so be prepared.
Good day, I'm Caroline Brown and this is your JIS News for Monday, June 16. The World Bank is projecting that the Jamaican economy will grow by 1.1% by the end of 2014. The bank also indicated in a news release that it expected the economy to grow by 1.3% in 2015 and 1.7% in 2016. This information comes on the heels of Jamaica's annual non-deal roadshow in the United States to sensitize stakeholders on the status of the Jamaican economy in a bid to boost investor confidence. The Jamaican delegation, led by Finance Minister Dr. Peter Phillips, is now in Europe to continue the tour, which is scheduled to end on June 21. Government has been pursuing an economic reform program for Jamaica to strengthen the tax system, reduce debt, and reform the public sector. Cabinet has approved amendments to the Customs Act to allow the Commissioner of Customs to forego security requirements for the temporary importation of goods.
The new regime, which will come into effect next month, will fast-track the movement of goods through the ports by investors, delegates and organizers of meetings, events and conventions, as well as the promoters of the film industry and international sporting events.
The Information Minister said the new rule would reduce the costs to persons investing in major productions in Jamaica and fast-track the movement of goods. More than 700 residents in Gibraltar and surrounding communities in St. Catherine are benefiting from a rainwater harvesting system. The system, which was handed over on Friday, included the installation of gutters and water tanks within 7 communities. Portfolio Minister Robert Pickersgill urged members of the community to take advantage of the new water system.
The rainwater harvesting system is a welcome investment and is expected to alleviate the water challenges that you have experienced in the past. I'm confident that this project will add to the productivity of your communities. This in turn will help to increase employment opportunities and development within your communities.
The rainwater harvesting system in Gibraltar, St. Catherine, was funded by the Inter-American Development Bank to the tune of $27 million. The system was developed in collaboration with the St. Catherine Development Agency and the Gibraltar Combined Benevolent Society. The Jamaica National Agency for Accreditation, JANAC, will be working more closely with the energy sector to encourage service providers to become accredited. Speaking at a recent JIS think tank session, JANAC's acting chief executive officer, Claudette Brown, said the goal was to boost consumer confidence.
We hope to be working with the various areas, testing, inspection. If the providers are accredited, then the consumer will have confidence in the product or service that they are getting.
Jamaica has agreed to the United Nations Declaration for a Decade of Sustainable Energy for All from 2014 to 2024. The declaration underscores the importance of energy issues for sustainable development. As the government continues to provide the necessary facilities for children in state care, it is also encouraging parents and guardians to create a more nurturing environment for them.
We have to make a very conscious effort to not only feed, clothe, and give our children a comfortable place to live, but we have to do more. Children need love, they need care, they need attention, they need access to extracurricular activities. So if a child is good at sport, we need to encourage them in sport.
Minister Hannah was addressing the Child Development Agency's 10th anniversary service under the theme Protecting Children, Transforming Lives, Securing the Future. She also urged Jamaicans to protect the nation's children and to speak out against all forms of child abuse.
It's time that we take back our country from what we're seeing happening to our children. It is time for everybody to work with everybody, not just the CDA, to make sure that we protect our nation's children for the future.
And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Caroline Brown. Thank you for watching.
It's time for us to get it right. Equal rights and justice. For our men and women. Equality. A message from the Bureau of Gender Affairs and Dispute Resolution Foundation, paid for by the UN Women Fund for Gender Equality.
Last week, Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller honored 40 of Jamaica's finest educators for their contribution to the sector. The event was among several assignments which occupied the Prime Minister and her team at the OPM this past week. Highlights next.
Prime Minister honors 40 of Jamaica's educators, Jamaica to ratify UN Arms Trade Treaty, and relaxed regulations at ports to encourage investment. This is Jamaica House Weekly. I'm Andrea Chisholm. 40 of Jamaica's exceptional educators were honored and feted by Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller on Thursday. During the Prime Minister's Medal of Appreciation for Service to Education, Mrs. Simpson Miller lauded the educators for improving the lives of Jamaicans by providing them with a range of services.
As teachers, trainers, counselors, administrators and researchers, you contribute to the building of an engaged population and an enriched knowledge society in Jamaica, and you build communities and inspire positive personal and national transformation.
Government has made good on its promise to tackle all forms of gun violence by approving the ratification of the UN Arms Trade Treaty signed in New York last June.
Ratification of the Arms Trade Treaty would assist Jamaica in addressing the challenges related to the inflow of small arms into the country. The intention of the Arms Trade Treaty is to regulate international trade in conventional weapons so as to prevent their diversion from the legal market to the illicit trade.
Minister without portfolio with responsibility for information, Senator Sandria Faulkner, was speaking during last week's Jamaica House press briefing. Senator Faulkner told the press that in order to fast-track the implementation of the treaty, Cabinet approved new legislation to facilitate the establishment of a single designated national authority to monitor and keep comprehensive records for small arms in Jamaica. The executive also gave its approval for amendments to the Firearms Act and the Gunpowder and Explosives Act, as well as any other existing legislation to include the relevant provisions necessary for the implementation of the treaty. In the meantime, National Security Minister Peter Bunting will be attending the 4th Biennial Jamaica Diaspora UK National Conference in June. Minister Bunting will be using the conference to update the Jamaican diaspora in the United Kingdom on crime-fighting measures and social intervention programs. The minister will also engage in bilateral meetings with government ministers and officials in London and Birmingham. Senator Faulkner also told the media that investors and promoters of major events on the island will have an easier time interacting with Customs. This as Cabinet has approved an amendment to the Customs Act to provide the Commissioner of Customs with additional powers to forego the security requirements on the temporary importation of goods. Drafting instructions have also been given to the Chief Parliamentary Council.
The new regime, which will come into effect next month, will fast-track the movement of goods through the ports by investors, delegates and organizers of meetings, events and conventions, as well as the promoters of the film industry and international sporting events.
The minister responsible for information also announced the appointment of the board of the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica and the Jamaica Bauxite Mining Limited, both of which are to serve for 2 years. And that's it for this week's edition of Jamaica House Weekly. Join us next week for the latest from the Office of the Prime Minister.
Welcome to the FSC Minute. I am Nadine Newsom. Today we continue to explore anti-money laundering and its implications for the FSC-regulated sectors. Joining me is Larice Edwards-Brown, Director of Investigations and Enforcement at the FSC. Welcome to the FSC Minute, Larice.
Thank you for having me, Nadine.
Larice, what does the FSC do to ensure that the insurance, securities, and pensions industries comply with anti-money laundering legislations?
The Financial Services Commission issues guidelines to these sectors, the insurance sector, pension sector, and the securities sector. Now, we try to ensure that at a minimum, these entities have controls in place that will prevent them from being used as conduits for money laundering or for terrorist financing. However, the licensees have a responsibility to ensure that they have prudent controls within their place of business to ensure that the guidelines and any government enacted laws are maintained within their organizations.
Does the FSC approve forms, requirements, or policies as it relates to compliance by regulated entities for anti-money laundering?
The FSC does not approve forms or policies used or procedures used by any of our regulated entities in seeking to develop a robust anti-money laundering or countering or financing of terrorism framework. We seek to ensure that they have minimum standards, and we also try to do an assessment of these entities to ensure that there are certain standards that are maintained within these institutions. But the whole process, though, goes beyond policies and procedures. We have to rely on our employees that are within these sectors to ensure that there is a presence of mind when you're dealing with customers who seek to do businesses with your entities.
And how does the Know Your Customer procedure fit into all of this?
The Know Your Customer procedure is very relevant. It helps the employee in the financial institution and also the compliance officer in the institution to understand the employee, know who is it that they're dealing with. So when a transaction seemingly is outside of the profile of that customer, then they can make certain decisions. That includes making a report to the Financial Investigations Division.
Thank you, Larice. My guest today was Larice Edwards-Brown, Director of Investigations and Enforcement at the FSC. For the FSC Minute, I am Nadine Newsom.
Nutritious food, succulent dishes, superior workmanship, and excellent service. Jamaica is on the go. Let's grow what we eat and eat what we grow. Let's harness the indomitable spirit of our most valued resource, our people. Let's support our local businesses. After all, buying Jamaican means building Jamaica.
June is Disaster Preparedness Month, and in our constant quest to keep you abreast of the latest technology relating to disasters, be it a hurricane, earthquake, or flooding, we found a machine that predicts your vulnerability to natural disasters.
Floods and earthquakes are two of the most common natural disasters. But unlike earthquakes, which usually take us by surprise, flooding to some extent can be predicted.
But when it is, what should we do with the information? And how do we safeguard ourselves and properties against this eventuality?
Through the use of revolutionary technology, awareness of the possible outcomes of a natural disaster has become more advanced. Persons are now able to use data on location, roof, and house type to create a simulation of what may happen in an earthquake, tropical storm, or hurricane.
The simulation was designed to combine place, type of structure, and event. Because Jamaica is vulnerable to four types of events: hurricane/tropical storms, landslides, floods, and earthquakes. But the same building that you live in is exposed to all four. And that same building you live in will react differently to all four.
Jamaica's landscape equally sits in low-lying and coastal areas as on hills and valleys. The country is also in an earthquake zone, so it can't hurt to do a little research on all the what-ifs, right?
You'll be able to go inside your house and see your roof being blown off, or your slab roof staying on. You'll be inside your slab roof house when earthquake shakes, it comes down on you. We'll be able to have those type of simulations.
How about the possible outcome of a Category 5 hurricane if you're living in a zinc roof wooden house that is built on stilts in a river valley? So now that these predictions are available to us, just how useful are they?
This simulator is now designed to take all of that information, the conventional knowledge that we as academics know, or the disaster management professional knows, dump it online as we have. Let the developer, housing developer, have access to it and see for himself. Let the parish council person or the development approval authority play with it.
And once they've viewed it, the authorities can use the data to plan areas for development, approve or deny development applications, and build better. The simulator is not just a special effect disaster interactive tool, but one that takes into account the realities of environmental and living conditions here in Jamaica.
And the simulator also seeks to bring an awareness of the impact natural disasters may have on lives, properties, and businesses in relation to the country's national goals.
The effect a hazard would have on everything ranging from the individual to the nation is important, and scaremongering only goes so far.
The simulator allows you to either scare yourself or reassure yourself, but it's based on reality.
Another useful element to this drill is the data it uses. Historical data are planted and come to life through the simulator to facilitate emergency responses as well as forward planning in action.
Knowing where hazards are and knowing where they're not is extremely valuable information to businesses such as insurance. Instead of blanketing Portland as a hazard-prone parish, we can know which parts of Portland are hazard-prone, therefore allowing people in Portland who are not in hazard-prone areas to get lower insurance premiums. You underwrite them differently. And you also underwrite more accurately and properly the people who are in hazard-prone zones.
So, if you have already bought your dream home or are thinking of buying or building, you may want to try a few simulation exercises to test the stability of your home or to find out if where you intend to build is the best place to put down roots.
Your hurricane preparedness starts even before you're into the aspect of your hurricane watch, hurricane warning, that kind of thing. It starts long before that, where you're, as I said before, you're doing your checks to ensure that you have adequate hurricane straps. You, from a retrofitting standpoint, you look at pruning of your trees. You look at ensuring that you have adequate supplies, so you don't have a rush on the supermarket what people normally tend to do. You run in the supermarket when you're hear that we're getting a hurricane, and then you find out you might get there late and there is nothing. Ensure that you have your supplies in hand and you can rotate those supplies. Ensure that you have your medical supplies. There are a lot of persons that are diabetic, with a large population in Jamaica that are diabetic. You have people who suffer from respiratory problems and are asthmatic and stuff like that. Ensure that you always have those supplies. Ensure that your documents are protected. You don't want to end up in a situation where you don't have all your school certificates and you're unable to probably go, when you're going out for an interview, you can't locate them. Ensure that you always have adequate fuel in your car. I know fuel is expensive, but ensure that you do have that, because you might have to do some kind of emergency movement after the system. Do your general checks. Ensure that your windows are properly secured, your doors are properly secured. You don't want to have those go. Ensure that you talk to your neighbor and you develop some kind of response activity with your neighbor, because sometimes the first person that will come to your aid is actually your neighbor. So these are some of the things that people should consider before the system.
Are you between the ages of 17 and 24? This next feature is for you.
Young, gifted and black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream.
My administration is placing a serious focus and emphasis on youth development.
And that commitment has manifested itself in government's focus on job creation and economic growth through the emphasis placed on education and training to benefit the nation's youth. Leading government's charge in this regard is the National Youth Service, the premier youth development entity catering to Jamaicans between 17 and 24 years old.
Young, gifted and black.
The whole direction and the mandate of the National Youth Service is to engage youth and help in their development towards employment.
And the 2014-2015 financial year is no different, as the National Youth Service will be targeting some 10,000 youth through a number of programs which have been created or extended to meet the growing demands of Jamaica's young people.
You can get it if you really want.
This year, 200 young people will receive training under the NYS's entrepreneurship program.
We train persons in various disciplines essential for starting and running a business for a 2-week period, and this is followed by a 6-month period of hand-holding.
And they will provide with business coaches who will work with them over a period of up to a year and guide them from business idea, from business plan, onto financing and establishing of their own businesses.
We train them on budgeting and time management and dispute resolution, market research.
On the other hand, we have courses which we call Entrepreneurship 101, which we run in each parish for youth who declare an interest in entrepreneurship. And we teach them the nuts and bolts of business. What does it mean to own your own business? What are the skill sets you need? What are the government agencies you need to engage with in terms of tax compliance, etc. And from their experience with that program, they will now determine whether they need to go to the next level and be engaged in our entrepreneurship full-blown program.
We're looking to expose 1,500 youth to entrepreneurship in the 2014-2015 fiscal year.
You can get it if you really want.
That program was born out of the recognition that many youth graduate from college and have no experience and therefore find it difficult to get full-time jobs because they have no experience to be able to take to their employers. But without the jobs, they can get no experience.
So the National Youth Service, in partnership with public and private entities, placed participants for a period of 6 months.
What we've found is once our participants show that they can add value to a placement site, the placement site generally takes them on.
Last year, 320 graduates were involved in the program, with an expected increase to 500 in the 2014-2015 financial year.
I would like to thank NYS for this opportunity, because without this internship, I do not believe that I'll be able to get a job as easily or to develop my capacity.
The exposure, it's a wealth of knowledge gained through participating in the NYS program, and it certainly has assisted in getting me to where I'm at now.
Through this program, the NYS partners with the Jamaica Values and Attitudes Project for tertiary students, JAMVAT, plus a tertiary institution to pay 70% of participants' tuition fees. With a focus on agriculture and the logistics hub this year, NYS is partnering with the College of Science, Agriculture and Education, CASE, and the Caribbean Maritime Institute.
Currently, we have 50 persons in the AHEP program, and we're going to add 100 this year.
"50 participants are currently engaged in a NYS JCDC events management program.
And their first priority is to assist with developing and executing all the programs associated with emancipation and independence activities for this year, as well later on in the year with the Heritage Week activities. So they're getting fundamental, very good experience in events planning and events management, which they can parlay into entrepreneurship and running their own events planning business.
In the financial year, the NYS will be engaging 40 participants in Information and Communications Technology (ICT) through a partnership with the Creative Production and Training Center, the CPTC.
Youth are very interested in those areas, and they can deliver value to the global market without moving from Jamaica.
The government is committed to providing jobs and in so doing grow the economy. And as an agency of the government, the National Youth Service continues to satisfy the ever-evolving needs of the nation's youth.
We have a broad mix of programs and opportunities that could or that would or that should appeal to just about any young Jamaican within the 17 to 24 age group.
There'll be a better tomorrow. 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 There'll be a day. There'll be a way. There'll come a time to sing a brand new song. There'll be a better tomorrow.
And that's where we leave you on today's edition of Jamaica Magazine. Join us tomorrow when host Adrian Atkinson presents another exciting program, which will include a wrap-up of the happenings in the Ministry of Water, Land, Environment and Climate Change. While you wait for tomorrow's program, catch today's show in full on jis.gov.jm. You may also visit our YouTube or Facebook pages for this and past elements. Have comments or queries? Email jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm. On behalf of the entire team here at the JIS, I'm Arroyo Eubanks, reminding you to make disaster preparation your responsibility.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.